Mary, just because there's a little bit of an echo, I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce you and set some of the ground rules for the session. All right. It is 7:00 at night on day 2 of the first ever Minnesota Distance Learning Summit. We had started this idea about 2 weeks ago. It started with a conversation or a post, a Twitter post that Jen Hegna had left. And Dave actually had answered that, talking about this is a time to join the community and try to make something great out of this. And a group of us talked for a very short amount of time and came up with an idea and turned that idea into a plan and then executed the plan. And wonderful people such as Mary Beth showed up as volunteers to present and share their talents with teachers across the state of Minnesota. We did get a little lucky because the governor did declare the 1st and the 4th days to get together to learn and do some planning in order to move on in distance learning. And so we've had a lot of participants because of that coincidence. But my name is Sean Beaverson, and I am one of the founders, and I will be your moderator for this evening. And so I will be paying attention to the chat to make sure that your questions get responded to. Please remember that this session will be videotaped. It's not a videotape. I don't know why I said that word. We haven't used videotape in years. It'll be digitally recorded because it is available on YouTube Live. We are presenting here and broadcasting at the exact same time as though we were television producers, which is pretty amazing. So remember, if you have any technical difficulties as this goes on, you can pop over to YouTube Live and you can watch it. Or if life gets in the way at 7:15, because it does that, all of the sessions that we have presented over the last 2 days are recorded and are available on Minnesota Distance Learning website, mndlsummit.org. So with that, I'm going to let Mary Beth take over and share us some great information about Nearpod and how we can use that to maintain the communities at a distance.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Beth Townsend, and I am here to teach you about how to use Nearpod in the classroom if you don't already know. And if you do already know, to give you some tips of just really incorporating some of the really amazing tools for Nearpod at a distance. I have a code to join my session, and you should see that on your screen. It is XTWJS, and I'm going to give people a minute or two to type that in. So go to nearpod.com and then type the code in, or join.nearpod.com. Either one of those works. We're just going to get started in, I don't want to waste anybody's time, so I want to get us going in a minute or so here. So XTWJS is your code. And if you're not familiar with Nearpod, I'm going to be in control of what you see. I'm going to be moving the screen. On your screen, you will see what I want you to see when I want you to see it. And we're going to talk about all the different features that Nearpod has to offer. And then at the end, there'll be time for question and answer. And my presentation has also been built into Google Slides, so I can share that with you as well. It won't have the Nearpod integration piece necessarily. So I'm going to close this. And so even if you don't see, even if you'll see what I'm showing as because you'll see my screen. So if for some reason you aren't able to join the Nearpod, you will still be able to see. So I can see that I have 19 people in the room. And so what we're going to look at is how to build engagement using Nearpod. So a little bit about me. I have a doctorate in education technology, and I am a Nearpod certified educator. And although I don't tweet a lot, my Twitter is at MaryBTownsend1. And my email address is there as well, mary.townsend@isc197.org. So I teach at Henry Sibley High School in West St. Paul. and I've been teaching for over 20 years at Henry Sibley. I teach social studies. And so as if you didn't already, didn't have a chance yet, you can join today's lesson. The code is right up in the corner here of my screen, XTWJS, and type in the code, add your name, join the session. And that code will be up throughout here. So if you get kicked off, which sometimes happens with technology, you just then hit the join code and join again. One of the things that you will be able to do from your session, because I have a premium account, is you can take notes if you want to within the session. So there's a little notebook tab, and you can choose to take notes via Google Drive, which is one I would recommend if you have a Google account, if you have a OneDrive account, or you can just send it directly to your email. So if you are interested in doing that, you would just click that little tab on the side of your screen, and you can just kind of have some notes to keep as we go through this. So I'm going to move on. Like I said, I don't want to waste people's time, and it's already kind of late at night. So one of the features that Nearpod has that is really nice is this interactive feature where you can poll your students. It's really easy and quick to make. So my question for you is, how familiar are you with Nearpod? And take a moment and yeah, an answer. And I think what's interesting is trying to do this sort of thing at a distance. You are currently doing it at a distance. I'm not in the classroom with you, but giving you the code, and magically over the Wi-Fi's, I'm managing your screen. But you can also give them a code and have it be like a homework session where they're doing it at their own pace. And so I'm going to wait another. So 26 people have responded, maybe not quite yet. I'm waiting for a couple people to respond. And so if you're seeing my screen as well as your screen, if you opened up two screens, then you would see like the teacher view as well as the Nearpod. And so this works really well on your phones. It works well on, I just moved accidentally, removed the screen. Here we go. It works really well on multiple devices. So, my students often were using their phones even when we were in school to do like Nearpods and things like that. So I'm going to share with you the results. And so you should see on your screen the pie chart here that shows that the majority of you have never used it before. So that's really cool. There's so much here for you to learn that 45 minutes is not going to do it. But it's not that it's hard to learn, it's just a lot. There's so many things that Nearpod has to offer. So, so I'm going to move on. First thing always matters to me. What do I get with this? Like, if I'm going to use a tool, I need to know what the pricing plans are. And there is a lot that is free. Not everything that I'm going to show you today is free. I have a district account, and so what that means is that I have access to all of these tools, and some of these tools are ones that you only get if you have the premium feature. But almost there's so much that you do get that it's really it's worth it to do, even if you're not going to pay the premium. And I'll come back to that page at the end and kind of show you what you do get and what you don't get. Why Nearpod? Well, enthusiasm, engagement, ownership, and data collection. Those are all really important things to me as a teacher. I really want, especially now, for my students to be motivated to engage with the material. And what is neat about Nearpod is all of the different ways that you can incorporate things all into one click. So it's as easy as typing in that code and then they're there. And you can get lots of feedback from your students if you're doing a live session like this, or you can allow them to do it at their own pace and then come back and look at the reports. So at the end of this training, my objectives for you: identify ways you can use Nearpod in your own curriculum, understand how to create a Nearpod, and I'm going to show you that, be able to add content to an existing presentation, be able to assign it like I did with giving you this code, and be able to find and use the reports for Nearpod lessons. So it's an ambitious list of things to try to get through here. So it's designed for distance learning, and what from the beginning, when Nearpod was created, they really were thinking about personalized learning and how to do things both synchronously and asynchronously, and to try to get 100% participation from your students. And I'm going to show you, like even with that poll that we did, getting that quiet kid to have a vote in your classroom is kind of an important thing. And it works with a variety of tools. They call it an ecosystem because there's so many tools that work. And one of the cooler things about Nearpod is they keep innovating. They didn't just get to a point and go, okay, we're good. They have added features, and they're collaborating with other tool makers and really making a robust product. I want you to, this is another way to get interaction from your students. So what you're going to do is down at the bottom, you're going to share some thoughts or images, and either one, doesn't have to be an image. What are the subjects and ages that you teach? And you'll see people's stuff popping in. And this is one that you can do asynchronously as well. It requires you toggling the ability to do so. So 1 to 6, pre-K to 5. And what is really, really neat is there's stuff out there for little kids. Like, this is such an easy tool and there's so many different things you can do that you don't have to be like, I teach high school, but this tool works at all age levels. I have seen it used when I was doing my dissertation. I was seeing people use it in elementary schools. So and what I did my dissertation on was iPads in K-12 schools. And this was one of the tools that a lot of teachers were using when I did my research. So yeah, okay. And one of the things you can do is you can go in and heart these high school world history. And so you can add, like, that's me, I do that too. And I'm gonna wait another second here. 11th and 12th health sciences, and there's so much content out there. ESL, there's a lot of ESL content out there. Now I don't know how much of it is free, but I'm going to show you at the end how many different resources there are. Chinese, that's awesome. So okay, I'm going to move on just to keep us moving. So there's 2 ways to launch a lesson. The way that we did it today, which was synchronously, I gave you the tool, I gave you the code, and I'm moving the slides. If you do it asynchronously, you're given the code as a student-paced lesson, and students can work at their own pace. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both of those. I have used the asynchronously in my own classroom when I was meeting face-to-face. I was personalizing my classroom, and I would have small groups of students. They might be doing their notes in this space in my classroom, and I was there to help them if they needed it, but they were just kind of working through taking Cornell notes using the Nearpods. But in this environment, it makes even more sense for me to have the code. But You could also, if you are having like office hours or classroom sessions where your students are checking in with you a specific time of day, you can do a synchronous lesson just like we're doing right now and have your students log in and even at a distance, so you can be doing that. So that's really kind of cool. And then they don't have to be long. There's a lot of like just quick check-in kind of things, just kind of a check-in with your students. It works with a lot of learning management systems. And for example, my district uses Canvas, and Canvas has a conferencing tool that is embedded into the system. So I don't have to use Google Meet. I don't have to use Zoom. Um, and my students can click right in the conference, and we can meet kind of in this same situation here, and I could give them the code and we could run through it together. The same thing works with these other systems. With Canvas, you can put a Nearpod link on the sidebar, and you can also just embed something so they don't even have to have a code. And there's an advantage to that because then it doesn't expire. So codes expire, and if I'm doing a homework session, I have about a month with the code before I would have to renew the code for my students. So if you're doing a homework session, that's something to keep in mind if they're doing it at their own pace.
Mary Beth, we got a couple questions from the chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So Katie asks if she has her 6th grade students doing choice lessons, can she put the Nearpod lessons on? She put the lessons on Nearpod with video links and slides instead of paper.
Yeah, yeah. You can embed video in there. I'm going to show you all of that. You can have your students do short answer questions and collect that data that way. It's a very robust system. If I'm answering let me know if I answered that question fully.
I think you are. And then the other question that Mandy had asked, which I think is a great one, is if you do a synchronous lesson, can she post the recording later for students to view if they weren't able to join?
If you are recording, like we are recording right now, then they would see the recording of all of this. Then you could also just do it as a homework session later. So there's a couple different ways. If you're recording your session, then they're going to see you recorded going through this lesson. They're going to see the teacher view of it. They're not going to see a student view. So if I'm like, we're recording this session right now, what the recording session is going to show is the teacher view, not the student view. So it's going to have maybe some more like privacy issues, right? So my students, I will see all my students' names unless I know to hide them. And I can do that. I can hide student names. If I'm going to record this and then have my students be able to see that recording, I want to make sure I've hidden student names, because what they're going to be seeing is the teacher version of this.
Yep. So I think
But
to Mandy, what Mandy is, and I think you've answered it. What Mandy is wondering about is this doesn't actually create a session. You would be recording using a screen capture. And then one other question that I think is a good one. Not that none of them are good. They're all good questions, but this one I think is important too. If the lesson is already started, can a student join in, and will they just be pushed to the middle of the session?
They will, wherever you are controlling it, yes. So then and that's where creating that student-paced lesson afterwards. So if I go through this with my students now, and then I want to put on my learning management system, here is what you missed. This is the code. So you can go back and study or review on your own pace. Then I would create a new session that's called a self-paced or student-paced lesson, and put that code for my students into my learning management system. And then after the next day or whatever, and that really is good for students who miss my class, even when we're doing it in person. So they missed my day of direct instruction, they're homesick, whatever, and now they need to catch up, or they want to go back over to review. So creating that homework code or that self-paced session code allows students to go in afterwards and do it at their own pace. So I'm going to move us along a little bit. Questions are awesome. Thank you. So yeah, so like we're doing today, right now, right here, using Zoom to record this, but that's how it's going to become a recording. It's not going to, it doesn't automatically record unless you're using a conferencing tool. I'm going to move on. And I'm going to show on your device. I'm not going to play any of these videos. I just want you to see that there are so many tutorials out there. So how to use it with Zoom, like we are right now, how to use it with Hangouts, how to use with Microsoft Teams. They have so many resources that it would be exhausting to just look through them like right now. So, so just so you know, when you go to the Nearpod website and you look for resources, they have a blog, they have trainings, they have webinars, like kind of like this. They have all of these other how-to guides, and they're all pretty short. And that's partly because it is so intuitive already. It really is not a hard tool to learn. There's just so much to it. So I'm going to move on. This is a slideshow tool. So what you will notice is on your device, you now have some control and you can actually scroll down. There's 5 slides on here. So this is one way of just incorporating material into the presentation. It kind of mixes it up a little bit, gives the students a little bit of self-pacing when you're doing a live session anyway. And just like if you had a bunch of photos that you wanted that work together, for example, and you wanted them to examine all of these photos and then answer a question afterwards, this would be a really good tool. What I'm showing you right now is the how to use something called Flipgrid. So if you have a Flipgrid account already, what you can do is take a text box and you can make it where they're answering in videos, and you can embed that into your presentation. And I did not do that for this because I felt like in the interest of time, 45 minutes is not really a lot of time to go through this, but you have to have a Flipgrid account. Flipgrid is free. But it's a way, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a way of you can record yourself and the students can record their responses. I embedded this in one of my lessons recently, and then I asked feedback from my students, and most all of them said they actually preferred not to be on camera. So, you know, high schoolers a lot more self-conscious maybe than middle and elementary kids. I have a colleague at high school, though, he was having groups of students do it and they liked that. I think this distance thing is a little more isolating. If we were doing this in my classroom right now, I would be having my students respond in groups using Flipgrid rather than individuals because of that self-consciousness. But elementary kids love it, middle school kids love it, and they're less self-conscious. And so the way that you would do this when you go to edit your Nearpod, and I'm going to get into all of that, but this is kind of like the screenshot of what happens. You add an activity to your slides, you choose the tool Flipgrid, then what you do after that is you embed a code that you would get from your Flipgrid site, and you put it in the slide, and then your students, when they get to this slide in the presentation, would respond by just recording themselves. So I think it's awesome. I love Flipgrid. I think my students are just a little, you know, they're at that age where recording themselves, for some of them, is not something they want to do. Here's another really cool, this is new. Relatively new, and I think it's really neat, is that they have this text to speech tool, this immersive reader. And so you take text can be read aloud or translated in another language. So I don't know if they do Chinese, but I think Spanish is one of them. Like, so this would be kind of a neat tool, and educating, like right now, because my students have been using Nearpod for the entire school year, trying to educate them about the new features is my challenge. Like, I need to do a recording to show them how to do some of these neat things that are new. So they can do a little more independently with these scaffolds, and so that's really pretty cool. And it's just selecting this icon, and it's not going to read a PDF. it's going to only read like the instructions, or if you type in all of the stuff, text that you put into a Nearpod slide. And like I said, I'll show you that. Open-ended questions, the draw it instructions, the poll that we did earlier, if there's a quiz, any of those things, it will read, but it's not going to read a picture like a PDF is a picture. So if there's a text on that picture, it's not going to read that. So then you would have to kind of maybe rethink, what do you want it to be able to read to your students, especially if you're working with English language learners. You might do a lot more where you're typing into Nearpod directly. I built this in Google Slides, and Google Slides has an add-on tool that I will show you at the end that makes it really easy to put into Nearpod. But you can embed a Keynote. I've done a lot of my stuff in Keynote, which is an Apple product, and PowerPoint as well. So it's really easy to turn an existing presentation into something that you just put into Nearpod. Moving on. This is just for kicks. I wanted you to see this tool. It is a VR embedded picture. And so if you were sitting in on a device, this might like rotate. And if you had an iPad and you moved the iPad around or on your phone, it would move the picture around. And I just wanted you to see that this is one of the cool tools. It's really kind of fun when I'm doing it in my classroom, and all of a sudden all of my students are like holding this up and really amazed at what they're seeing. So I just embedded it in there just to show you kind of the cool feature that it is. Here is another thing. It's called a Draw It. And I embedded this picture. And so at the bottom of your screen, you will see like drawing tools. And this is a really good way to check in with your students. And you could just do just this slide. It doesn't have to be like a Nearpod doesn't have to be a super complicated, long, hour-long session. It can be just a quick check-in, like a quick quiz, a bell ringer, or start of the hour kind of thing, or an exit ticket. So what I want you to do is to circle the one that matches how you're feeling right now about distance learning. And what is neat is you can share individual work with your students without them seeing the student's name. So if I wanted to show you somebody's submission, I would click on it and show you that. And so I'm waiting a couple seconds here while people finish. And again, this is a good way to share that, get that participation from your students. They love to see what they have done shown to the whole class. And they're not going to know, the other students aren't going to know. But if you're working with a group of kids, often they'll be like, show mine, show mine, show mine, and even high schoolers want their stuff shown. So I'm going to give it another second here. There's a couple people are finishing up.
Mary Beth, while you wait for people to finish up, Rahima asks, which option did you use for VR? And I think what we're wondering is, did you take that picture with
no, that is completely
did you pull it in?
I pulled it in from Nearpod. Nearpod has all of these amazing things that are just in Nearpod. And when I'm designing my lesson, if I can find something, for example, I was teaching about India. So I went and found a picture of the Taj Mahal, and it's a VR look at the Taj Mahal. There's actually even another one where it's like a 3D model, and you can flip it around and kind of look inside. So there's a lot of, like, for science, there's more like 3D models, but those are all tools that are in Nearpod just to pull from.
And the last, for clarifying, she asked, which option was it in Nearpod?
It was the field trip, the VR field trip is what we did there. Okay, so I'm going to show, so you should now see one person's. I could go through and I could go through the whole class, and I could show just one at a time. A lot of you are happy. That's good. That's good. I know I saw a couple that were worried. But so this is just, and if I wanted to do, like, for example, I used to teach um, economics, and I would have just like a graph paper, and it would have everybody draw like supply and demand curves. And I could see instantly, did they get the concept or not? So you could put a map in there, circle these countries, or put an X on this, you know, piece of whatever you wanted them to identify. So it's just a matter of taking an image that you have and then embedding that image into the Nearpod. And again, here's another tool that works embedded with Nearpod, and that's called vocabulary. I think Nearpod bought vocabulary recently. And so again, I can find, and they don't have like a huge library, but I was teaching something about Latin America, and I found a vocabulary video that had to do with the revolutions in Latin America. And I was able to embed that into my lesson and ask a couple questions and some short answer. And it was really, really easy. And it was just a matter of just sharing it within the lesson. And because they're all doing this at home, they're watching it at their own pace. So that's pretty cool. I feel like I'm going to run out of time here if I don't get moving here. The one thing that I really, really like about Nearpod is all of the data collection. And so you can see, like I showed you with that graph, you can see answers to students' questions. You can see their quiz results. So here's like my dashboard. So I have a district account and I have hundreds of Nearpods. I have had my students make Nearpods as well to teach other students. That we did in the classroom. You might be able to work that out at a distance now, but that's why I have these folders up here. So I have all my stuff into folders. I have literally hundreds of Nearpods that I've made, and they're all kind of organized here. And then what you can see is there's reports. And so this is what it would look like. I just did one on Latin American independence movements, and I would be able to click into any of these things if I had them. Just because it's up here doesn't mean that I necessarily did it. I didn't do a draw it with them, for example, or matching pairs. But they could click in. I can click into any one of these things that they did, and I can hand grade. Or with the quiz, I can see immediately their scores, and I can tell, do I need to go back over with something and meet with my students and talk with them about, something that they missed, or am I able to move on? And here's that flip grid. So if they did the video, that would show up here. And here's a little time to climb is a newer feature, and they have different themes now. And so it's just, I have two quick questions for you, just so you get an idea of how this works. So you're going to pick a little emoji, and once I get most of you in here, I'm going to hit start. And your emoji is going to try to climb this mountain by getting the answers correct. And there's only 2 questions, so you're not going to get the full experience. But if I had a 10-question quiz and my kids are all doing this, they would see themselves hopping up the mountain. So it's a little more interactive than just a standard quiz, but you can do a standard quiz feature as well. And got 12 of you in. Might hit start just to get us moving forward, because I feel like I have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to kind of go through some of this other stuff. So I'm gonna hit start. 14 of you in. Okay. So if you didn't get in, don't worry about it. But it's gonna ask you a couple questions. And you should be able to go as soon as you're ready. So you can just start answering. And then it's going to there's going to be a little bit of a delay, and then it'll show you moving up. Yep. And let's see how we do. And so there's a timer attached to this, so it kind of gives it a little more sense of urgency. Okay.
Do you have control over the music as a teacher? Can you mute that?
No, I mean, I would have to mute it, but it didn't let me.
That's good.
Yeah. So there's where we are. And you can see our winner. So I'm going to show you how I built this, and I'm going to show you all of the really cool tools that Nearpod has from the other side of things. So I'm going to go to my other tab here. And are you seeing? You are seeing, yes? You go to the beginning. Okay, so I made this lesson using a tool called Slides Carnival. So there's a little meta, but Slides Carnival is a tool to kind of make a nicer slides presentation, Google Slides presentation. So one of the cool things is there's an add-on, and Nearpod is that add-on. And so if I have made it in slides and I'm using this add-on, that's how I end up editing it. And so I'm going to go to here and show you what that looks like here. But then I'm also going to go out to Nearpod and show you what it looks like just from Nearpod's viewpoint. So here is where I can add, I can edit this lesson, and then I can add different features in. Here's where if I want to edit the lesson, and click here. And here's all the different things, and that's what it looks like from this within Google Slides. So I can add the poll. There's a simulation, there's slideshows, there's a sway is a thing. If I want to embed a video, all of these different tools I can do. Here's the field trip. That's what you did with that VR. There's vocabulary. So if I want to add stuff in here, that's how I'm going to do it, because I created it in Google and I have the add-on. If you don't have the add-on, that's okay. You don't have to have the add-on to make your slides in Nearpod. So I'm going to go out to, here's Nearpod. So now you should be seeing this window. And this is all of my, these are ones that I've made. There's so much in the Nearpod lesson library that you can find a lot of free stuff with just searching. So if you search like the Nearpod lesson library and you want to find, they have a whole bunch of good stuff. They have, you know, some of these, they're free. And the problem for me when I'm showing you this is because I have a district account, everything's free for me. So it's hard for me to show you what the free account, I would have to make a separate account, I guess, that's free. But there's a lot of VR tours. And so one of the things that I have done is just like use some of these lessons that are just exploring a place. So when I teach geography, I might say to them, you know, I want you to look at this this national park, or this, we did a whole thing on different state. They made a city and they were in a different state, and there's an amazing number of Nearpods that are based on just like states. And so you can see people are using it in kindergarten, first grade, all the way through high school. I've used this tool teaching adults like you. So there's a lot of range of abilities here. You can do a quick launch. You can create. So I'm going to go back to here. The little house is my library. And and you can see like there's news and updates here. This is a join, to join. Here's one, like all of my economics ones that I've done. And so if I were to edit this, I'm going to say, okay, don't worry about it. I'm going to edit this old lesson that I made years ago. And I want to add some of these new features in that didn't exist when I made this. So I'm going to go to add, there's add content, add web content, and add activity. Add content is this. If I just want to type in a slide, I'll show you that in a second. Here's your vocabulary link. If I wanted to find something on economics, I can search and see if they have anything on supply and demand, and they might. So I'll give it a couple seconds. It's gonna go up to space, but here's where I'd search. So I'm gonna go supply and demand and see what I get. And I might, oh, here, economic systems. So, so this is first to fifth grade. This is an economic systems one, 9 to 12. So I might want to watch it first. I'm not going to do that right now, but so you can preview, and then you can say, yes, I do. I want to add this. So that would be how, and then when you add a slide, it always goes to the bottom. Anything you add goes way to the bottom. So then you just move them around. So if I wanted this to be in a different place, I just move it around. And so that's one. That was the vocabulary. If for some reason there was a field trip, I wanted them to see the simulations. There's a lot of really cool things that I will never use because I don't teach math, but there's math and science simulations in here, which are really, really cool. And so that's the simulation option. The Nearpod 3D, I mentioned, I've used like the Aztec Temple one. I've used, there's one on the Taj Mahal. But if you're doing a cell, if you're doing science, there's a lot of options here. Ancient times. So this is where I've used some of these. If you're teaching environment, human body, all these different things. So that's the Nearpod 3D, which is different than the VR field trip. That was this. And you just type in a destination and it comes up with a whole bunch of stuff. So it'll come up with, it automatically populates. So here's Taj Mahal. And I've used Taj Mahal ones. But if I don't see something, it doesn't mean it's not there. I can type in something here and it'll get me all kinds of different stuff. So that's the VR. And there's videos. Sway is like a Microsoft tool. A slideshow, I kind of showed you how you choose your bunch of pictures that you want. And if they all go together, that makes sense to have them be in a slideshow. So those are, there's, like I said, there's just too much. I'm going to run out of time before we get it all. Add web content is if you have a website that you want them to go to. You put the URL in here and then they would be able to go to it. So I had done that in my presentation where I had you could see, it took you to the YouTube videos that Nearpod has. So this is just an external tool, nothing fancy. This has all these different activities. So if you want to have, so matching pairs is kind of a fun one where they can, play a little matching game. The quiz is just multiple choice. So if you're going to make a quiz, it's just multiple choice questions. And you type them in and then you choose your answer. You can add some media, you can add audio instructions, which is nice. You can change it to having a timer, which is really, really cool. And then you can keep adding questions. So you can add false, so you can have multiple, 4 or 5, however many options that you want. You type your question in here, you tell it which one you want to be the right answer. You need to randomize it. It's not going to randomize it. So keep that in mind. And then the time to climb was you can take that quiz and you can turn it into a time to climb kind of review activity. And so that was a new one. I like the fill in the blanks. You take the text from something, and then you pull out words that you want to have them fill in, and then you put them in there. Collaborate is like the Padlet type board that we did in one of them. Draw it, we did. So, I mean, we did a few, but there's just, it's a lot to try to do it all. So the other thing I wanted to show you is then if you just even wanted to create your slide in Nearpod, you want to make your entire presentation in Nearpod, you can do that by picking a theme right here and typing in your text. And then here you can drop in images and video and GIFs and text, your instructions. I can't type go here. It's not as fully featured as if you're doing something in Slides or Keynote or wherever, because this is the extent of my ability to manage the text. So that's huge right here, right? That's what they call huge. And if I change the format on this, it's going to change it on all of the ones that I make. But you know, I have a little bit of tools like layout. I can record audio. You can preview it here. So and you can do bullet points and numbers, but it's not as fully featured as if you're going to make it somewhere else. So, so that's, wait, no, I thought I was canceling. Okay. So that's how you edit. So this was all made, these were all made in Keynote years and years and years ago. And what I did, and is I made it into Keynote, and then you just essentially just drop it in when you add the content, and it renders, and then you hit save, and it takes a little bit of time for it to render, and then it'll show up in your library. And then you can create folders, you can put things into folders. So if you're really, really new to this, if you've never used it before, I recommend even looking in the Nearpod lesson library and seeing what's out there. There are some amazing people who are doing really cool lessons in possibly your topic. And you can save them to your own library and you can edit them. So you can add slides, take slides out. You can see what other people are doing. If you go back to my library, I have so many that are made by other people. So although I have made, literally hundreds of them myself, iCivics has a whole set of them that are made for Nearpod.
Beth, you are on a good topic for me to interrupt really quickly. Michelle is wondering, when you use something like vocabulary, do you have to use the entire lesson, or can you use the elements of it?
Yeah, you can edit it. So I can take somebody else's lesson. Like here's this demographics. This person makes a lot. This Paul Thiebert makes a lot of them. And I can preview it. I can edit it. I can make a copy. So, and I can share with other teachers. I can add it to the school library or to my folder. And I can export it as a PDF. So if I go to add, I can take out slides, and then I can also add my own slides. I can move them around. I can add different quizzes. I can take out their activities and make my own activities. I could take this home slide with his name on it, and I could, if I didn't want his name on it, I could change everything could be changed. Okay. So yeah, so I know I'm at 7:50 here, so I've run over.
You're good, Dr. Townsend. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was a great introduction to Nearpod. You covered a lot of really useful information, and as you said, it's pretty unimaginable to cover the whole thing in just 45 minutes. But here's the good news. This session's been recorded. It's available for people afterwards. And with your inspiration, people will go out and search for more information about Nearpod. So thank you so much for your time. You've answered most of the questions that came through. I am now Just going to do a quick mute here to get rid of oh, she got it. I'm going to post a link to the Flipgrid to continue this conversation after today so that you can post there and you might ask some questions for Dr. Townsend there and she can answer them, or you can answer questions with each other. That's a cool thing about Flipgrid. And then as a reminder, our CEUs are available on the mndlsummit.org site. Post a chat to that, Beaverson. I'm doing it. So that we have that as well. And that, my friends, concludes 2 pretty remarkable days of volunteer learning online to make the best out of a really weird situation that none of us would ever have asked for or planned on being, but that is making lemonade out of lemons. So thank you all so much for joining us for the 2 full days. Remember, as I've said, everything is available over on the mndlsummit.org site. All of these sessions are available, and we get a question regularly. Hey, if I watch the video, can I still get a CEU? You sure can, as long as you're willing to fill out the short little reflection that we have to prove that you watched it all, because we know you're not like 8th graders and you'll just skip through it. I see people laughing like, you know what I mean. Yeah, no, I know. Okay, Dave, did you have any final closing words you wanted to do? Dave, again, we got to make sure to give a quick round of recognition. I'm trying to avoid shout out. I feel like shout out's gotten kind of be tired. So I'm trying to avoid shout out. So recognition for Dave running this, the back end of this through Zoom for 24
Yeah, I was just going to say 24 hours of learning in 2 work days is pretty amazing. And that happened in under 2 weeks of planning. So that definitely was such a great collaborative effort. And it all sparked on Twitter. So if you are not super engaged and active on Twitter, go make that account. Go follow the Minnesota Distance Learning account. Go search the hashtag, see what people are sharing, because there's so much there. And you can talk to Sean and I all day long, because we'll reply to you, because why not? That's what this is all about, is learning together around this very interesting and, knock on wood, once in a career type of deal.
We're out.
But that's it. We're out.
It's like just imagine the big room where people are
7 more minutes so that we can say it was 24. It's only 23 hours though.
Oh, that's fine. I feel like that's satisfying enough. It's pretty good. 10,000 people. That's,
Yeah. And that was just this afternoon.
Yeah.
Like that, we still have like 4 or 5 hours since that was pulled.
I know. That's pretty exciting. Just a real pleasure, real treat for everybody. So
I guess the one more thing would be make sure to keep going back to the website, because somebody said it one time. And it's "We are not done."
It was
so
Lana.
let's see what's next. Oh, it was Lana, right? Yeah.
Lana coins that phrase, because one of the things that, as long as we're wrapping this up, we just got started in a place that we were familiar. So the people that helped put this event together were all people with some experience around putting together PD. And so we began, much like you did, in a place where you were familiar. And we were like, well, what tools do we have that we can use to help reach out and connect this community? So we started in a familiar place, but we are absolutely thinking about what we could do next and what is going to be next to continue to grow the community, because that's one of the advantages we get. Everybody's online right now, so let's connect and grow this community. So if you pay attention to the MNDL Summit hashtag on Twitter, if you follow Dave, myself, or any of the other presenters on Twitter, we will be pushing out a form later this week that is the I'm In form, and that is your opportunity to sign up to volunteer with us for an upcoming event, to help us come up with some new ideas for an upcoming event and find ways to continue this work going forward, because it is essential work. I'm going to close with this last little thought that I had for all of my elementary colleagues in Edina schools when we began this journey. What I thought to myself was, you remember that quote by Mr. Rogers about when there are times of stress, when kids are feeling stress, Mr. Rogers' advice was to look for the people the people that you can rely upon. See the police officers there, see the firemen there, and know that you're being taken care of. In this pandemic, in this issue, in this situation, the teachers across the world are one of those people that our children and families can look to for reliable, thoughtful, and connected ways of being together. And so that I am eternally proud to have been a part of this and to consider myself or be able to call myself a professional educator, because we make a difference every single day. So thanks, everybody. I really, really appreciate you joining us on this.
Can we say that was the best soundbite ever? We'll pull that in post and use that in the clip. There we go. So make sure to head over to the website, fill out those CEU forms, and there's also a feedback form for us to tell us what we can be doing better and invite you to help us do better. So please make sure to get those taken care of. I'm going to be closing out the room and ending the stream. Have a wonderful Monday night and enjoy your students tomorrow morning.
Bye, everybody.